what we try and do is identify people who have suffered persecution in their own countries, have come to the UK. Most of them are enormously talented, enormously committed, hugely qualified in their own countries. But they need to go through a process to rebuild their lives here. And having been accepted as refugees is only the very start of the process. So what we do is to grant bursaries and a lot of assistance to guide people to convert their talents into marketable skills in this country. And we, through the charity, do a small amount by way of grants. The individuals who suffered persecution and are attempting to rebuild their lives do a fantastic amount, and they are the real heroes.
I would like to share my personal story with you, a journey that is both difficult and deeply personal for me to talk about. My name is Fatma. I am a Kurdish and Alevi from Turkey. Some of you may know that I was a lawyer and a human rights activist in Turkey. I also served as a representative and consultant for the People's Democratic Party and as the co-chair of the Association of Lawyers for Freedom. However, shortly after arriving in London for what was supposed to be a brief visit, my home and my firm in Turkey were raided by the police. Knowing that I would likely be arrested if I return, I had no choice but to seek asylum in the United Kingdom. This decision, as you can imagine, was far from easy. It was especially hard to leave my clients behind because they were not just clients, they were also friends in the same human rights struggle. It was equally difficult to part with my colleagues at the Association of Freedom for Lawyers and, of course, from my family. To this day, I still carry the weight of being separated from them and from my profession. I miss them deeply. But I also knew that facing imprisonment a second time would be even more difficult. The desire to live in a safer and freer country gave me the strength to make that decision. When I first started living as an asylum seeker, I didn't know what to do or where to turn. Leaving my country wasn't something I had planned, and I felt like my entire life had been turned upside down. This feeling of uncertainty and loss reminded me of a time when I had experienced something similar. During my final year of university, when I was arrested right before my exams and sent to prison. In 2011, many Kurdish politicians and students were arrested in Turkey. Over 2,000 Kurdish university students, including myself, were unlawfully imprisoned for their involvement in human rights activism. At the time, I also felt that same emptiness, as if my future had been suddenly snatched away. Just 2 months away from completing my studies and starting my legal internship, I found myself behind bars instead. I had two options. I could either give up on my education or, despite everything, push through and take my exams to complete my degree. After enduring severe torture, continuing with my education seemed impossible. But I chose the harder path because people like us had no other option but to succeed. My motivation was simple. I wanted to become a lawyer so that I could defend myself, the people I had met inside, people who had been unjustly imprisoned. I believed then, as I do now, that being Kurdish Defining my people's rights as speaking my mother tongue shouldn't come with such severe consequences. In short, with this motivation, I passed my exams while in prison and I completed my degree. After nine months, I was released from the prison. However, when I decided to stay in the UK, I found myself facing similar feelings. Once again, I had to choose between failing into my trauma and living in passive life or building a new and successful life here. For those of us who come from a tradition of resistance, the first option was never truly an option. I chose to integrate into this country, continue where I left off. I worked hard to improve my English and applied to universities to pursue a master's degree. I completed a master's in international humanitarian law at the University of Essex. After finishing my degree, I decided to pursue a legal career here in the UK. At that point, I connected prison of conscience. First of all, they sent me on an unforgettable holiday to Jersey last year, for which I am incredibly grateful. Once again, I want to express my heartfelt prisoner of conscience. I am currently preparing for the solicitor exam, and they continue to support me, not just financially, but emotionally as well. They have given me confidence to believe that I can once again be a lawyer. As I said at the beginning, we have no choice but to succeed. I hope that one day we can all live in a world that's more free and more equal, where children don't die and where people can live freely in their culture and speak their language without fear. Thank you so much for listening to me.
I really would like to thank prisoners of conscience in supporting individuals in reaching out to their full potential. And here I'm particularly grateful to my good friend Gary for the support as a director of prisoners of conscience that he's providing. Now, I will be brief, but I will tell you something about myself and how I have learned to respect those who have come through these difficult times in their lives and through adversity, through persistence. I'm an academic, I'm a human rights lawyer who has spent 30 years in looking at the challenges, in looking at the issues which people face through different countries. I'm a specialist in the field of Muslim constitutionalism and Islamic law. And I regularly come across people who have been persecuted in various countries. My field of work is largely in Muslim majority countries. I was the UN Special Rapporteur on Iran for 6 years, and I know from the very good report that you have produced, Gary, that there are case studies of people who have suffered in Iran. But there are many other examples. And these individuals are simply persecuted because they are seeking rights which are inherent to everybody. And Gary already mentioned the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It is a beautiful document. It is a document which contains 30 articles encapsulating all our human rights. And these are fundamental principles. For example, the right to life, the prohibition of torture, freedom of expression, the right to have a belief or non-belief, the right to freedom to change one's religion or not to have one's religion, the prohibition of torture. These are rights which everybody should have. But regrettably, in many parts of the world, people are regularly abused simply for speaking their minds, or simply dissenting in what they believe. And we just heard Fatma, and we're going to hear others who have the same story. And what happens to these people? When they disagree, when they dissent, they're not only rebuked, they're not only tortured, but their life is put into so much threat that they are forced to leave their homelands. And I tell you, nobody wants to leave their country. You know, this is some kind of a myth that's been established in some parts of the world. Increasingly, I say tragically, in the United Kingdom, that there are groups who say that people come here just for some benefits or some attraction. It isn't. Nobody wants to leave their homes, their friends, their families, and all they have. They are forced into that. So the first point, and the most important point, I think, that we need to appreciate is that we have to respect people when they are forced to leave their homes. So instead of, denigrating those people who are asylum seekers or who want a better life for themselves, we have to appreciate them, and we have to value their potential contribution to their homelands, to the country that they want to make it their home. So the second related point to that is the enormous value which prisoners of conscience are presenting, the great opportunity to rebuild lives for people who have lost everything, who have nothing. I mean, imagine having to leave everything and come to a country with nothing. Who is going to support you? And that is so important for us. The range of support that they're providing is not simply, subsistence, it's not simply scholarship, but it goes down to various levels. For example, supporting acquiring linguistic skills, empowerment of individuals, taking references, supporting them in their employment, supporting them to get education. And I think that these are really honorable, gestures, and we have to provide full support. I will simply end by thanking Gary for inviting me to this occasion, and to David for his excellent work, and I wish this charity all the best. Thank you very much.
The son and grandson of political prisoners. I am someone who has many friends who are political prisoners. I am someone who grew up not knowing the extent to which every single friend of my family had in it someone who was in prison. Stories that break my heart in the telling. I'm someone who grew up not knowing that my father's earliest memory was of going to visit his father in prison. And because he was so young, being allowed behind the prison bars to sit on his father's lap and look out through the prison bars at his mother and grandma. And the extent to which this is riven into my life. I'm also someone who was a very active participant in the 2011 revolution in Egypt and everything that followed, and the counter-revolution, which has resulted in at least 19 prisons built since there, over 60,000 political prisoners, one of whom is my very dear friend, Khalid Abdalla, who I'm a big supporter of in terms of the campaign for his freedom. And of course you realize, the more deeply riven you are into all of this, but what is being incarcerated amongst prisoners of conscience is not just their bodies, but our collective future. It is not just their bodies, it is also their families. And so, if there's anything that I kind of, in some deep way, want to stress, it is that they are not just people who need our support, they are people who stand out there and support us. That without them, the future that we clearly desperately need will be forever deferred and forever delayed. You see it in the deepest way, and I speak here from the Egyptian experience, but I've seen it could be for anyone else who stands here. When those prisoners of conscience are put behind bars, some part of you, some part of me, is put directly under threat. And it is in the kind of aspiring acts of what they stand for that another future, another world becomes possible. That's where I live. The other thing, I guess, to say, which I think goes straight to the heart of what I understand prisoner of conscience's work is also how much, wherever that haven can be found, whether it's in this country or in other countries, that haven becomes an incubator of that future that we clearly so desperately need under the difficult circumstances that we know get more and more and more difficult. And time and again, I see those friends, time and again, I see those family members who move into a different context, incubating that future. I owe my very existence to what it means to fight for a better future through prison. And yeah, I just want to thank you, and I want to thank you for asking me to be here, and just simply say that, that by supporting organisations like this, we're supporting a better future.